Are you happy? Truly happy? Have you ever actually felt that feeling? Will you ever be happy? And if you were, would you even recognize it? Many people consider happiness the ultimate purpose of life: having children, drinking, saving for retirement, getting married. Yet, happiness remains poorly defined and fleeting. Is it really worth chasing if it's so temporary? Defining happiness is a difficult philosophical task, but let's set that aside for now. I trust that each of you has at some point felt a personal sense of happiness. Based on this, let's take a psychological and philosophical look at how to pursue it. In The Happiness Hypothesis, social psychologist Jonathan Haidt combines psychology and philosophy to better understand this search. He begins with an important idea. We live divided within ourselves: the mind versus the body, the left brain versus the right, primitive emotions versus rational thought. We exist in a constant state of conflict between these opposing forces. To explain this, Haidt introduces the metaphor of the elephant and the rider. The elephant is a powerful yet sometimes irrational force that drives us forward. The rider is weaker but possesses intelligence, capable of guiding the elephant, training it, and making the journey smoother and faster. We must recognize that we are both the elephant and the rider. But before the rider can effectively lead the elephant, Haidt argues, we need to make the elephant less pessimistic. One of the greatest enemies of happiness is our own thoughts. They constantly burden us with worries, doubts, and insecurities. To some extent, this is the result of our evolutionary negativity bias. The elephant, by default, pays more attention to the bad than the good. And for a good reason. If we only noticed pleasurable things, we wouldn't have survived for long. This is largely due to our limbic system, particularly the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, which has direct access to any potential threats in our environment. It changes the way you think. A single moment of anger toward another person can shift the way you see everything about them. Every word they say, every action they take suddenly feels like an insult, a deliberate attack. Sadness works the same way. It dulls the senses, making all joy and opportunity seem distant, unreachable. Jonathan Haidt believed that people struggle with their own nature, trapped in a cycle of pessimism and self-doubt. He saw the human mind as both an elephant and a rider, one powerful but instinctive, the other rational but weak. The rider can guide the elephant, but only if the elephant is willing to listen. And the elephant, by default, is always looking for danger, for threats. There were ways, however, to train it. The first was meditation. Sitting still, focusing on breath, seemed like the simplest thing in the world. But anyone who tried it quickly discovered how difficult it was. Thoughts drifted in, demanding attention, filling the silence with worries and distractions. And yet, with practice, meditation changed something. It loosened the grip of fear, made thoughts feel less like absolute truths and more like passing clouds. Over time, the mind became calmer, steadier. The second method was cognitive behavioral therapy, an approach developed by psychiatrist Aaron Beck in the 1960s. He had noticed patterns in his patients, repeated ways they distorted reality in their own minds. He called it the cognitive triad of depression. A person believed they were worthless, that the world around them was dark, and that the future held no hope. These beliefs shaped everything they saw. There were names for these distortions. Catastrophizing, turning a small problem into a disaster waiting to happen. Personalization, blaming oneself for things far beyond their control. Beck's therapy taught patients to recognize these patterns and challenge them. A simple exercise like stepping outside instead of lying in bed could disrupt the cycle, proving to the mind that not every thought was reality. But not everyone could retrain their mind so easily. Some people, no matter how hard they tried, still struggled against an unshakable darkness. For them, Haidt suggested another option: medication. Some brains, through no fault of their own, were wired for negativity. For those people, a simple pill could do what years of therapy sometimes couldn't. Studies showed that SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, could be as effective as therapy itself. Yet this approach came with its own controversy. Some saw medication as a shortcut, a way to avoid the struggle that supposedly made happiness meaningful. Others feared something deeper, that these drugs didn't just lift people out of depression, but changed them, altering their personalities in subtle but undeniable ways. Even those who had always been emotionally stable sometimes found themselves feeling something unfamiliar, a sudden, unexpected sense of flourishing and confidence. At this point, Haidt poses a question. Does this sound like progress or like opening Pandora's box? But before answering, consider this. Which of these ideas feels more true, to become everything you can be or to stay true to who you already are? Modern culture encourages both relentless self-improvement and authenticity. People want to grow and evolve, yet they also want to remain themselves. The contradiction is often resolved by thinking of progress as a form of authenticity. Becoming better feels like becoming more real. Haidt challenges this logic, especially when it comes to the idea that using antidepressants somehow contradicts one's true self. But let's assume for a moment that pessimism has been overcome. Negative thoughts no longer take control. Is that happiness, or is there more to it? Stoicism and Buddhism offer a different answer. Their teachings, especially in today's world, suggest that happiness comes from letting go, from releasing attachments to external things and accepting life as it is. True peace is found not in chasing pleasure, but in learning to live without needing it. Stoicism in particular describes happiness as ataraxia, a deep, unshaken calm. Not the excitement of achievement, not the thrill of success, but a steady, quiet contentment. Do not seek to have events happen as you want them to, but instead, want them to happen as they do, and your life will go well, wrote Epictetus. In this view, happiness is not about changing circumstances, but about accepting them fully. Haidt, however, believes Stoicism and Buddhism may have gone too far. Happiness can come from the outside world, as long as one knows where to look. He calls this the progress principle. The elephant, he explains, doesn't just experience pleasure when it reaches a goal. The real joy comes from each step forward, from knowing that progress is being made. This idea is supported by research on happiness. People feel a rush of excitement when they finally achieve something, but that feeling fades quickly. What lasts much longer is the sense of moving in the right direction, the pleasure of improvement itself. A person training for a marathon feels happiest during the process, not after the race is won. A musician finds joy in mastering a song, not just in performing it perfectly. The thrill of a new achievement is fleeting, but the satisfaction of progress is steady and enduring. Shakespeare captured this idea perfectly. Joy's soul lies in the doing. The progress principle is closely tied to another concept, the adaptation principle, also known as the hedonic treadmill. Simply put, each of us has a natural happiness baseline to which we inevitably return. Some people's baseline is higher, others lower. As soon as the excitement and satisfaction of reaching a goal fade, we immediately set a new one. The feeling of accomplishment is always temporary. This effect is even visible at the neurological level. Nerve cells respond intensely to new stimuli, but over time they adjust and stop reacting as strongly. The Stoics, Buddha, and many other philosophers understood this phenomenon well. They argued that trying to change external circumstances is pointless. A person will never feel content if they are constantly chasing something new. More than that, the Stoics insisted that we should only try to control what is truly within our power, our thoughts, emotions, and reactions. External circumstances, on the other hand, should be accepted as they are. This perspective aligns with a major finding in modern happiness research. Genes have a far greater impact on happiness than external conditions. People living in cold regions often assume that those in warm climates are happier, but research shows this isn't true. The same applies to physical appearance. Many believe that attractive people are happier than those who are less conventionally beautiful, yet studies find no real correlation. Wealth and material goods, too, only increase happiness to a certain extent. Studies have shown that after an annual income of around $75,000, happiness levels stop rising. More money brings more comfort, but it doesn't bring more happiness. However, some factors can still have a significant impact on our happiness, despite what the Stoics believed. First, noise. Even when a person adapts to a noisy environment, studies show that their cognitive function declines and their overall level of happiness decreases. Second, long commutes. Research confirms that even after years of commuting, people continue to experience high levels of stress related to travel. Third, lack of control. Environments where a person has little autonomy, such as school or a job with minimal independence, can significantly reduce happiness. Fourth, shame. Personal insecurities and feelings of shame can seriously undermine one's sense of well-being. And finally, the most important factor, relationships. More than anything else, relationships shape a person's happiness. The more strong, positive connections a person has, the more likely they are to feel fulfilled. Bringing all of this together, researchers in positive psychology have developed a simple formula for happiness. IS represents a person's biological happiness baseline, which can be adjusted through meditation, therapy, or medication. C stands for external conditions that do in fact influence happiness, such as commuting and relationships. V refers to voluntary activities. But if we've already reduced negativity and improved external conditions, does that mean we're now happy? Not quite. Haidt quotes Bronte's wisdom. It is vain to say human beings ought to be satisfied with tranquility. They must have action, and they will make it if they cannot find it. This is where voluntary activities come in. These are the meaningful pursuits that allow us to experience the progress principle, finding joy in the process itself rather than just the result. Nothing illustrates this better than the concept of flow, a state of deep immersion in an activity that is challenging but still matches one's skill level. Flow can be experienced in sports, deep conversations, creative work, or any activity that requires full concentration and a certain level of mastery. Activities that fully absorb us offer something far greater than simple pleasure. While they can bring moments of joy, they provide something deeper, a sense of true fulfillment. Pleasure is fleeting, a sensory delight that fades as quickly as it comes. It brings excitement, but only for a moment. Fulfillment, on the other hand, is lasting. It is the quiet satisfaction of progress, of mastery, of knowing that effort leads to growth. Eating ice cream brings pleasure, but too much of it, and the enjoyment dulls. The thrill disappears, leaving nothing behind. Fulfillment works in the opposite way. The more a person invests in something meaningful, the richer the experience becomes. A musician does not grow tired of playing an instrument the way someone tires of a favorite dessert. The more they play, the deeper their connection to the music, the more satisfying each note becomes. Happiness, then, is not something that simply happens. It requires understanding. A person must first accept that their mind is both the elephant and the rider, one powerful but impulsive, the other rational but weak. The rider can guide, but only if the elephant learns to listen. And that, Haidt argues, takes work. The first step is retraining the elephant, softening its natural tendency toward negativity. Thoughts shape experience. A mind weighed down by fear and doubt will see only obstacles, but a mind trained to recognize thoughts as passing events rather than unshakable truths becomes lighter, more open to possibility. Meditation helps. Cognitive therapy offers tools to reshape old patterns. And for those whose minds are naturally wired for pessimism, medication may provide a necessary shift. Yet happiness does not come from within alone. The world around us matters. A person might fight to reshape their thoughts, but if they spend their days in a noisy, chaotic environment, the strain will still be there. The brain does not simply adjust to noise, it suffers from it. The same is true for the exhausting grind of long commutes, the frustration of a life with little autonomy, the heavy weight of shame. These things do not disappear just because someone has trained their mind to be stronger. But if a person can change what surrounds them, if they can find a place where they feel at ease, reduce the stressors that chip away at well-being, then happiness becomes easier to reach. And once that balance is in place, the final piece falls into place: action. Charlotte Bronte once wrote, "It is vain to say human beings ought to be satisfied with tranquility. They must have action, and they will make it if they cannot find it." Happiness is not stillness. It is movement. It is the pull of a meaningful pursuit. This the immersion in something that demands attention and skill. Athletes feel it when they run, artists when they paint, writers when they lose themselves in words. This state, what psychologists call flow, is the purest form of presence. It is not about the end goal. It is about the act itself. And that is the secret. People do not chase happiness. They create it through what they do, what they build, what they love. But this is only the beginning. Because happiness is more than just a feeling. It is love, it is virtue, it is meaning. And that is a story for another time.